This is a distribution board. The distribution board is used to connect the battery. We can use electric welding here. Red wire is positive, black wire is negative. For all motor wires, the red wire needs to be connected to the positive electrode and the black wire needs to be connected to the negative electrode. This is a support rod, a 3-way pipe. Tighten all 3 screws with a screwdriver. This long screw needs to go through the hole in the rod. There is a hexagonal hole here. You need to put a screw nut. These few screws can play the role of fixing the frame. These 2 frames can play the role of fixing the position of the drone. Tighten the screws one by one with a screwdriver. So that the drone can be supported. This is a signal extension line. Because the signal line is not long enough, we added an extension line. We need to pay attention when connecting the extension line. This is the black line above and the white line below. The black wire should be connected to the black wire, and the light-colored line should be connected to the light-colored line. Once connected incorrectly, the motor will not be able to be controlled. After connecting, we also need to use adhesive tape to stick the joints tightly in order to prevent the connection from being disconnected and affect the use. Here is the same operation. Pay attention to the connection between the black wire and the black wire, and the connection between the white wire and the yellow wire. Make sure that the 2 black lines are at one way and the white and yellow lines are at one way. Use adhesive tape to fix them so that the ends of the lines will not fall off. When finished, pull the lines out of the nozzle, which is connected to the folding drone arm. Then use a screwdriver to tighten the screws here. Now we start connecting the motors. We've put the wires through a board earlier. Now we're going to connect it with the upper and lower boards. The connection requires the screws. Now the screws in our hands are anti-loosening screws with silicone washers at the screw nut. After the anti-loose screw is screwed in, it is not easy to loosen and fall off, so you have to remember that this is the anti-loose screw nut. First, we need to fix the board and the motor with ordinary screws and connect them. Other motors and boards are also tightened with ordinary screws in turn. Thread 4 long screws into each board. Then thread the 2 semicircular fittings into the long screws. Put it on the tube after pass it, and thread the remaining semicircle fittings into the long screws. Finally, connect the second board, align the holes, and tighten with the anti-loosening screws. The anti-loosening screw is a screw with the silicone washers at the nut just mentioned, which can prevent the nut from loosening. Tighten the screws one by one, put them straight, and align the outside with the nozzle. Then we tighten the upper screw, and we also need to clamp the screw nut. Assemble each motor in the same way. Now the 4 motors of our drone have been assembled. The following main issues we need to pay attention to are these. Take this board as an example. There is an arrow on the board. The arrow points to the front is the drone head, the behind is the tail. The motor on the right side of the drone head is the number 1 motor. It must be rotating counterclockwise so we can see that the motor we are going to install has a counterclockwise rotation mark. The motor on the left side of the drone head is the number 2 motor. It must be rotated clockwise. We can see that the arrow on this motor is clockwise. This one here is the number 3 motor, which rotates counterclockwise. This one here is the number 4 motor, which rotates clockwise. The whole sequence is counterclockwise, clockwise, counterclockwise, clockwise. Remember not to make mistakes when installing. We will also provide drawings, and you can also look at the drawings carefully to install. Different flight controllers have different wiring diagrams, so we need to check how the motor is wired. We must read the instructions of the flight controller to check which motors need to be counterclockwise and which need to be clockwise. The software interface you see now is the description of the GUI flight controller we use. For example, for the 4-rotor drone we connect, we need to install the motor according to the position displayed on the interface. The figure shows motor 1 must be counterclockwise, motor 2 must be clockwise, motor 3 must be counterclockwise, motor 4 must be clockwise. Installation must be strictly in accordance with the drawing requirements. Let's look at the distribution board now. This distribution board now also needs to be screwed to the base plate. You don't need to tighten the screws too tightly at the beginning. You can tighten them at the end. Now we tighten the screws. Next we will install the battery compartment. 4 pillars are needed to install this. We now screw the pillars to the board in turn. Then screw the bottom plate of the battery compartment to the other end of the pillar. In this way, the battery compartment is installed. Next, we can start to install the flight controller and remote control. The flight controller can be installed on the above board. Then add a cover plate and screw it on.